Welcome back to another episode of Be Our Guest here on Musical Theater Radio. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanoff. When a podcast tagline is no rules, just musicals, you know you're in for some fun. Now, today we will be speaking with the creator of the Broadway Ginger podcast, which is also now part of the MTR family, which is awesome and can be heard Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on the station. So it's time to talk with journalist, podcaster, and theater aficionado, Sally Fuller. Sally, how are you? It's awesome to have you on.
Yeah, it's fun to be here. That was a really fun intro.
Well, I'm looking forward to finding out what the no rules means. That is going to be the key of our interview today. I'm pretty sure.
It's really that, like, I love creating and I love podcasting, but I can't really like nail myself down to really specific things. Okay. So it's more like if I do an interview one week and then like a fan out the next, then don't be upset because I said there were no rules.
It's like, cover yourself because I've already told you no rules. So
yeah, exactly. You know, actually, it's funny because that tagline came from our trailer when my season 1 co-host Ashley and I were making the trailer. Okay. We were literally just like talking about the show, and you can hear it. Actually, it's still like that's still the trailer that I have up. I need to update it, but we were talking about the kinds of things we would be doing on the show, and I said we'll be talking about musicals, and then I said sometimes Broadway, sometimes off Broadway. And then it just came out of my mouth. And I was like, there are no rules, just musicals. And then after I said it, and after I was like editing the trailer, I was like, this is what our show is. Like, this is the unifying theme right here.
Nice. Well, let's get to find out a little bit more about you, because I know that's what the listeners have been clamoring for. I've been getting an email about it. People don't listen. they don't talk to me. They listen to it. They don't want to talk to me. But I want to know who Sally is. Who is Sally in 30 seconds? Give us the 30-second bio.
Oh my gosh, 30-second bio. Okay, so I'm a theater nerd, lifelong theater nerd, lifelong writer, and I think, yeah, my two greatest passions are theater and writing, and so my job has really come very naturally. I've been a theater journalist for the last like 9 years or something. I feel like that's not a very good Sally in 30 seconds, but and like my entire identity is work. No, there is more to me than that. But you know, one of the biggest things I shouldn't leave out is that I have really long red hair. So that's why I'm called the Broadway Ginger, because I like Broadway and my hair is ginger. Nice. And which makes more sense for people who are not in the US, because the word ginger is used more like in Europe, but I think it's fun.
Nice. So when you were growing up, were you always into musical theater? Was that something you discovered a little bit later? And were you the black sheep of the family, or is that a normal thing within your family, the arts?
Oh my goodness. So my family is such an interesting combination of like jocks and theater people. Like, we're literally High School Musical, just like in a family, which is so sad because I really don't like High School Musical. But no, like literally, like one of my older brothers is like, a couple of my brothers were basketball stars, but also like one of them has said like he wished he could have done a lot more musical theater. So I'm just like, literally Troy. But actually my family, my parents really love musical theater. And so actually like that was how that was one of the things that drew them to each other when they met at work, like, you know, in the 70s. They were like, my dad would whistle show tunes around the office. And my mom was like, wait, is that little Abner? And Dad's like, yes, you like musicals? And I was like, you like musicals? So their first date was to see a dinner theater performance of Little Abner in, I guess, Virginia. I'm not exactly sure where. So like growing up, like the music we listened to was like either oldies, because there was a great oldies radio station in Atlanta, or we would listen to Broadway records. So I'm very much like not the black sheep of the family. Like that's very much what we all enjoy. However, now that my siblings and I are all adults, I'm the only one who like works in theater. But I mean, I think they mostly like still like it. We'll still sing together, and sometimes like when I get together with some of my siblings, I'll like play the piano and we'll just sing our favorite show tunes and Disney tunes. So very much blending in.
Nice. So in High School Musical, are you Sharpay? Is that even a character? Honestly, I don't even know. I think that's a name I remember, but that's all I really know about that movie.
Honestly, yeah, like I would love to be Gabriella, who's like the one who's like, I don't even know if I can sing. What's musical theater? And then like has this gorgeous voice. But the reality is like, yeah, I feel like I don't think I'm Sharpay, because I was definitely never the girl who was like getting all the leads. Although if I were in High School Musical, I would definitely love to play Sharpay. That would be, I mean, the most fun role, of course.
You completely lost me on all of that stuff. I have no idea. I thought that sounds like a name I heard back in the time. I don't remember.
Yes, yeah, no, she's the like one who's always getting the leads in the musical theater shows. Wow. And she struts around. She looks like Elle Woods. And
do you have a dog?
She has a dog in my imagination right now, but I'm not sure if that's true.
Okay.
I'm like, maybe I'm really just picturing Elle Woods.
That's what I'm thinking too. I'm like, is there a Jonas brother too? Or am I? Oh, it's an Efron. That's what it is.
Yes, yeah, it was a Zephron. Yeah, Zephron at his best. Which interestingly, he didn't do his own singing for High School Musical, but he can sing. So he did it for Greatest Showman, but then they, auto-tuned it a lot, so you can't really tell, but he can sing.
Okay. Yeah, didn't see this coming, this whole High School Musical trend, but that we were going to go on. But hey, no rules, right?
Yes, no rules, just musicals. That's the risk you take when you talk to me.
All right. So you obviously there's a lot of passion for musicals and theater in your family. So you said you're a journalist. So was that always something you were gonna go into, or was there with being in the theater world and enjoying that, were you thinking about being in theater as an actor or a writer or director or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for everyone who ends up in the theater industry in some way, there was a dream to be an actor, at least as a child. I think I probably, by the time I was at an age where I could like actually make decisions about my professional future, for college and stuff like that, I was pretty set on being a theater journalist, because I got an internship with BroadwayWorld.com when I was 17, and got to do a little bit of coverage for them, because I think when I was like 15 or 16, I realized that I was reading Playbill.com and BroadwayWorld.com constantly. So my mom was like, hey Sally, like you should really think about like working for them. And I was like, what? I don't even, I think in my head I was like, is that a job? Right. But then they did have an internship opening. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll apply. And then my acceptance email was like, this is kind of weird, because like things don't get lost in cyberspace these days, but legit, like my acceptance email was lost in cyberspace. So they had like, it seemed like they said they wanted me, and then I was like, okay, it was like they needed me to send them something else, and I sent it to them, and then they didn't respond for like 2 weeks, and I was like, I guess I didn't get it. And then I like followed up, and I was like, hey, like, did you still want me, or like, did that ship sail? Yeah. And they were like, oh my gosh, like we responded to you, but you didn't respond back, so we just figured you didn't want it anymore. And I was like, But then I was like, no, I do. So then I got it rolling. That was, I guess, November 2011. So.
Wow. So you're writing for Broadway World, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Nice. And then did you go to post-secondary for journalism as well?
Yeah. So actually, I was a journalism major for like a semester,
Okay.
and then I realized. So I took my first journalism class,
Mm-hmm.
and I realized, first of all, that I had learned a lot of that from Broadway World, because they had, like the more that I was very eager to do more than my job, they would just teach me some random things, which I got to college and I was like, oh, this is like real journalism stuff. But yeah, in my first journalism class, I realized that you major in journalism if you want to really go into that whole field. And I really just wanted to be in the arts and entertainment.
Yeah.
So when we were like, I don't know, studying things that involved really like sad news stories, I was like, no, thank you. I don't want to cover anything that's sad. Now theater news is sad, but
Sure.
but in general, I was like, no, I don't think so. So I just switched over to be just a communications major with a theater minor. So I did a lot of public relations. Didn't know what that was, but did it and enjoyed it. And I did a lot of theater classes and a few film as well, I think. So I just probably one of my most like favorite classes that wasn't necessarily directly in theater or in writing was one of my media history classes.
Yeah.
Because I love history of media, and I did for that class I did a paper on I Love Lucy, and it was so fun.
I kind of wish you'd stuck with the journalism class. So when you're handing in stuff to the professors and they're reading through like Civil War breaks out, blah, 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 Sondheim releases a new song. like just dropped in the middle of what they're reading. They would be so confused as a journalism professor.
Yeah, exactly. I realized there was just a very different vibe in the journalism department. And then when I discovered, when I got to the theater department, I was like, this is my home.
Nice. So when you were writing for Broadway World, do you remember the first interview you did and how you got through it? And were you nervous? Were you just trying to figure your way through it?
Oh, okay. So this is a spicy story, and I'm not going to share the name of the person, but there was a. Yeah, I'm going to tell a story.
Okay.
So there was a Broadway actor.
Okay.
Who had some connections to some people that I knew in Atlanta. So Atlanta is a huge hub for obviously film now, but even like it's been a really good theater city for a long time. So like we have the Alliance Theater, which has Tony Awards has a Tony Award for being best regional theater, but it has pre-Broadway premieres that start here. So like Tuck Everlasting, The Prom, which I didn't like, and like Sister Act, I think was here. Anyway, because of that, there's kind of a good number of people who are like, who either start here and end up in a pre-Broadway premiere and then go to Broadway, or they'll be Broadway people and then they get called in to be in this pre-Broadway premiere and things like that. So anyway, because of that, the overlap with Broadway in Atlanta is very fluid. So there was a Broadway actor who had some Atlanta connections, and this person was gonna be in the national tour of the musical that was coming through the Fox Theater, which is our place where tours come. So I was in my second semester of interning with Broadway World. And by the way, interning for Broadway World, really all I was supposed to do was edit press releases from like random theaters throughout the US. But I loved it so much, I connected with our local Broadway World Atlanta senior editor. And I was like, hey, can I cover some theater with you? And he was like, sure. And so I think I was like, oh my goodness, this Atlanta person is going to be here on national tour, and she was on Broadway in this show as well, and so I should totally interview her. And I think I was afraid that if I, this is so bad. I think I was afraid that if I asked anybody, like if I asked my supervisors at Broadway World or anything like that, that they would say no. And so I was like, well, I'll just, I mean, like I know people who know this actress who's coming through. I should just like Facebook her and like name drop them. And that's probably the way to do it. So I was picturing like the theater mentors I had at the time were really, really fun, extremely accessible. So I was picturing her to be exactly like them. I have since learned that a lot of Broadway stars are not like that. But I was like 17. So I was like, this will be great. Like, why wouldn't she want to chat with me? So I arranged the interview via Facebook. So I like Facebook messaged her and I was like, hey, I'm so-and-so's friend. And I see that you're coming through Atlanta with this show. And I know you were in it on Broadway. I think it's really cool. Like, can I interview you? And she was like, this really isn't usually how this kind of thing is done. But okay. Yeah. So her response should have been my first clue. So then we arranged to have a phone call. She called me and she did the thing with her number where it's like she makes it like unlisted. And again, like these are all signs that she might not have been the most enthusiastic person to be talking. So anyway, then we get on the phone and and I'm not very good at, well, I'm just incredibly honest. And so 17-year-old Sally is like, lets it slip that I didn't talk to anyone at Broadway World about this interview. Oh. And so the Broadway actress was less than impressed. And she was real ticked. And I have a much better understanding now of all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. But I just like really didn't realize that that's really not how things are usually done, and that time can be really valuable to those people. So she literally was like, I have so many other things I could have been doing right now. I cannot believe you wanted to waste my time. And I was like, oh. And so then finally she was like, well, if it's not on Broadway World, what's this going to be used for? And I was like, well, I'm in school, so like I would use it for a research paper maybe. And she was like, okay, as long as you're not wasting my time. And I was like, okay. And anyway, then eventually she said, because you were a friend of so-and-so, yeah, I will do it. And I was like, okay, thank you. So then I will never forget, we started out and I'm like, I had no idea how to do an interview, no clue, but I thought I did. So I was like, I'll like ask her full name, because that's what people do like as an interview. And I ask her name and I'll never forget, she like pauses really, it's like a really sassy pause. And she says her name really specifically like that. And I was like, oh no. And she like didn't include her middle name. And I was like, that's not what okay, never mind. So we did the interview and I did not record it because it didn't occur to me that that's what you do. Again, if you want to think about like, what does a 17-year-old version of No Rules, Just Musicals Sally do? Yeah. She like doesn't research and just runs into into an interview. So anyway, I was like taking notes while she was talking and looking back, I'm like, this is insane. Like, how was I supposed to, whatever. Anyway, so I'm taking this while she was talking. And then I think I wrote it all like on the spot after the interview was up. Oh, and towards the end of the interview, she was nicer. She was like, so are you coming to see the show? And I was like, yeah, I think I have tickets. And she was like, oh, okay. We'll definitely like come to the stage door and say hi. And I was like, what? And then I wrote up the interview and as a feature story. Yeah. And I sent it to my editor at Broadway World, and she was like, hey, this is a really great start, but this reads like a research paper. So we're not going to be able to publish this. But since you want to do this more, like, let's get you to do this more. I was like, okay. So I was like, it was a traumatic experience in many ways, but it was interesting because when I went to see the show and I went to the stage door, I said, hey, I'm Sally. And she was like, oh, you came. And she like gave me this big hug. And I was like, what in the world? So it was such a roller coaster. And it ended up being funny because then I like told this, like before I went to see the show, before I realized she was going to be nice to me after all, I like told some of my other mentors in Atlanta, I guess, like, oh my gosh, I had this weird experience. Like, this Broadway actress hates me. And they like told their colleagues.
Oh, no.
So then when I did my like first Atlanta interview with an Atlanta actor, I think his name was Hugh Adams, or Hugh Adam maybe, and he was in The Foreigner. We sit down to do the interview, and I knew a lot better how to do it. And he goes, oh my goodness, I heard about what happened with you and so. I can't believe she did that to you.
Wow.
And I was like, I really did not mean to like spread this around town. Like, I was trying to process affirmation from my friends, and like, anyway, it was it was such a saga. But so that was my first interview. But my first published interview was with Hugh Adams from Georgia Ensemble and The Foreigner.
But think about all the experience you got just in that first one interview. You learned everything almost, right? Trial by fire. You just jumped in, and I think maybe she realized, you know, because you probably told her, did you tell her that she was your first and that sort of thing? Yeah. And so, you know, I think as most humans, you know, you start to understand and you loosen up, but yeah. But you said you didn't want to say who it is, but now we do know. We've narrowed it down to she. Yeah. So now we're gonna all be looking up she.
Yes,
who's been on Broadway.
Any Broadway actress who's come through Atlanta.
Exactly. Wait, the Google results just got me 200,000 hits, but I'm gonna go through each one of those.
Yes, yeah, because I really do not want to like slam her name at all. So like, I feel like at first, like right after it happened, I definitely had the motivation inside me to like badmouth her and tell people like, oh my gosh, like this actress, so mean, what a diva. What's funny though is like, I do remember there were members of my family who like took her side. And they were like, well, to be fair, Sally. And I was like, what? You know, 17-year-old, my amount of humility that I had was not enough for me to see that I could have been in the wrong at all. So anyway, but since then, I really don't want to slam her, but it really is a good story.
Exactly.
About me. And you're right that I really did learn a lot. Like I made almost every single mistake you can make doing an interview. And so now I know, like, so I knew immediately, okay, I have to record it. I have to record it. I have to plan, I guess I had planned questions, but I have to be above board about it. I can't just arrange it kind of under the table with friends. I need to arrange it with the theater, with the person, and be really honest. And again, like looking back, I'm kind of like, I feel like there are ways that she could have been more gracious, because I'm not sure that I've talked to very many people who were who have been as concerned about the things she was concerned about. But you know, it was really good for my hardest interview to be my first one of my hardest interviews for sure.
You know, get that hard one out of the way right at the beginning. Yeah. So and
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you know, when you're an adorable teenager,
I know it's a little
sometimes. Yeah, it's a little. But you know, I remember being surprised that she did not give me, like, when I told her, well, I'm 17, like I'm still learning this, like that actually might have made her madder over the phone. So
yeah.
Playing the kid card was not always good. And so again, like I learned, I was like, okay, I'm not playing the kid card. I'm going to be really professional. So, you know, the next interview I did was, you know, maybe like a month later. So I think I had turned 18 at that point.
Okay.
So I was older and wiser. But I was like, okay, like professional always. Don't play the kid card. The fact is I look young anyway. So like, I guess it was, I realized it was a little hard to be taken seriously as a professional for a little while there.
Now, of course, when she is listening to this interview, she's going to just call in. she's going to email me and be like, Sally said what?
Oh my gosh, yes.
she's going to know.
You know, maybe she won't, because maybe that's happened to her with multiple. Like, I don't know.
All right, so let's head on forward. So why did you start the podcast? You obviously were doing the interviews, the journalism stuff for Broadway.com. What made you want to do the podcast next?
Oh my goodness, that's a really good question. So yeah, I was doing Broadway World, and I guess in the last 4 years, I guess I transitioned. So for a couple of years, so after being an intern, I ended up writing, like being like hired by Broadway World, and I was their weekend news desk editor. So when Ham for Ham was new, I was throwing those videos up there. I was coordinating with Laura Haywood and Howard Sherman and getting those videos. That was probably one of the most fun things I did. And I was a social media manager for a little while. So then after that, I graduated college and kind of moved some things around in my life, and then transitioned to the Broadway World Atlanta senior editor position. Oh, wow. And that's what I do now. So I guess I wanted to do the podcast because I loved these interviews that I was doing, but no one ever got to hear them.
Yes.
And so I think for me, part of it, I was like, well, I really love talking. So part of it was that I would love for people to be able to hear my interviews, because you get so much more out of hearing people as opposed to just reading the interviews. Yeah. And also, I grew up listening to a Broadway radio program called A Night on the Town, which was a product of Musical Theater Heritage, a company in Kansas City. Musical Theater Heritage is still out there. They're awesome. They're doing some virtual things. My family and I watched their Christmas show and loved it. So A Night on the Town was hosted by George Harder, and he would get on there and he would talk about theater history, Broadway history, and play Broadway songs. So I think I kind of always wanted to be George Harder. And I wanted to, like, I think I would, like, as a child, I would like pretend that I was him. Like I would talk about the shows that I was listening to and kind of like talk to myself and hope that none of my siblings were listening. And so I think that was actually always a dream of mine. So I think that was one of the reasons I wanted to do the podcast, because I was like, I want to talk about theater history like George Harder, and I want to throw in some interviews in there, and you know, share my opinions. I've also been a theater critic, so I realized writing theater criticism can be really hard, but I realized that if I'm just like discussing my opinion on something, it flows a lot easier. Mm-hmm. So yeah, a few different reasons, I guess.
So how long ago did you start it?
The podcast? I started it, our trailer, I think, dropped the end of September, and our first episode was released October 5th. So that was of 2020.
Okay, because people could be listening to this 20 years in the future, and they'd be like, they're like, Sally, when did she start? I'm so interested.
Just now. No.
And then you'll be interviewed by some 17-year-old 20 years in the future. You can give them a hard time.
I'll be like, 2:00 is my best time. If I was 17, I would have bumped you to 1. Oh my gosh. Nothing but love for her.
So 2020, you said, right? Was it just you? You said you had somebody you worked with.
Yeah. So I started the podcast with, well, first of all, my husband, Thomas Fuller, who is a software developer, and he is great. He's very talented at many things that I'm not talented in. So it's when we were dating or something, he was asking me like, okay, what are your long-term goals with theater journalism and stuff? And I was like, goals? What? Like I kind of fly by the seat of my pants. And he was like, well, I feel like I really want to help make your dreams come true. So how can I help you with my computer skills? And I was like, I love you. but that was one of the things. So he was like, okay, like I'll research the technical aspects of doing a podcast and we'll make it happen. So he's one of my business partners, I guess. He's the CFO of Broadway Ginger for sure. And then I also had a theater friend named Ashley Elliott, who we have many random connections, so it's hard to even say how I know her, but theater colleague. She's also my editor at the Alliance Theater for their the feature work that I do for them. So we just Ashley and I can't get rid of each other. We're always working together. Like she's been one of my Broadway World writers. Like I've been her editor. She's been mine. Like we've been co-hosts.
Yeah.
So she was definitely part of my brainstorming team. And she was my co-host for our first season.
And for the first season, like I remember when I started my podcast, it's figuring out your structure, how you want to do it, who you want to talk to. Did you go through some growing pains with that? And as you've now entered season 2, have you found that you've morphed from one way when you started to doing slightly different and learning from that as well?
Yeah. I think a couple things. I think when I first started, I felt really afraid to express this is so weird, but I felt kind of afraid to express my own opinions on my show, because I think I have a tendency to hide behind other people's opinions and other people's facts. So I think that was something that I grew in a lot, immediately, because after recording this, we hadn't even released episodes yet. But I realized I would debrief episodes afterwards with my husband, Thomas. And he was kind of like, you know what, there's moments when you're expressing your opinion about the show and you're not just talking about the history of it, but you're talking about, whether or not it worked or how it's related to other things, or, talking about my personal interpretation of the themes, all that kind of stuff. Thomas was like, that stuff is that's really good content right there. And I was like, shoot, oh no. So that was one thing. So then as we kept recording, after he had noticed that, as we kept recording more episodes in the first season, I would try to work that into my plan for the episode. And I remember there being moments while we were recording where I was like, wow, this is going to be good. This section, I remember when we were talking about Next to Normal, we went down some really cool trails talking about the themes and just talking about honestly theorizing about what would have happened in the story if Dan had related to Diana more on her grief. Is that part of why their relationship fell apart? Is that part of why she felt so distant and felt like she couldn't be with the family anymore? So just, I don't know, just things like that I kind of learned while we were recording. That's the one that stands out to me for sure.
Nice. Is there any interviews that you've done since the first one that stood out for you for your podcast that you really just enjoyed? I know you probably enjoyed them all, but one that just, it just stands out where you had a good time.
Yeah. So it's interesting for the podcast. Specifically, I haven't done that many interviews yet. For my third season, we are transitioning into like all interviews. With, probably a couple guest spots sprinkled in there, but yeah. So I guess for my podcast, probably my favorite. Gosh, so I guess I've done 3 interviews so far for that. One of them that I did was with Craig A. Meyer, who is he's a mentor of mine and one of my many like random theater mentors that my family is friends with, that like we kind of knew him through theater a little bit, and then our relationship with him grew and we stayed connected because he goes to my parents' church, oddly enough. And so we've really remained close family friends because of that. But so I interviewed him on my show because he's a Tony voter and he has been on Broadway. His resume says he worked with Alan Menken on Aladdin. So he was like one of the voices for Aladdin in the movie. Wow. And so yeah, it's uncredited. It's a little sketchy. But yeah, so I interviewed him basically just like about.
My computer just crashed or the internet just went down. So Sally, tell us again a little bit about Craig. I'm not sure where exactly we left off, but continue.
Yeah, so in my episode when I interviewed him, we were talking about how Tony nominating and Tony Award voting works, because he was a Tony voter for 20 years. So it was a really fun, I love that interview. It was so much fun. I mean, we talked, it ended up being 2 episodes. And so I think we talked for like an hour and a half. And it was a really good way for him to talk about his passion for theater, and also like in a very structured way, but also recall performances he had seen on Broadway, and just to be able to talk about how Tony's work. And it was really sweet because like there were a couple times he was talking about what's so special about theater, and he was tearing up, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. So I loved that interview because like I was interviewing him, but it was also part of it. There was a good deal of back and forth. Like I really wasn't just asking him questions. And because I know him really well, we had some pretty good rapport that way.
Nice. And I do not envy you doing it the other way, because I was thinking when I started my podcast, do I do interviews? Do I just do research? I don't want to research if I have to talk for half an hour and I actually have to do that much. With an interview, I can do a little bit of research and then just riff, right? The rest of it. But
yeah, exactly. Which is funny though, because actually like I love the research. It was such a blast. I mean, like for my last, for my first episode of season 3, or first 2 episodes, I had a guest on there to talk with me about the Phantom of the Opera. And again, it was like part interview, part just discussion. And I did so much research on Phantom, and it's really like, it's not necessarily one of my favorite shows. Like I really respect it, but even though it wasn't one of my favorites, like I was deep down that research hole for sure.
So what have you been doing over the last 18 months? We all know theater's closed because of the pandemic. Did it affect the way you were working? I know obviously you couldn't write so much about broad theater, but were you able to transition into something different and build some different skills? What were you doing?
Yeah, good question. So so last year when pandemic hit, I was working for Kohl's, the retail store. I was there I had just moved into the position of being the head of their beauty department. So I was working for them full time, and I was also writing part time. So when pandemic hit, I lost like most of my writing gigs. It was such a blessing. I honestly thought I was going to lose all of them, and I wasn't sure that I would get them back. But I was able to keep like 2 small weekly articles I was writing for this website. I used to write 4 for them every week, and then we knocked it down to 2 because of pandemic. And so like that was a huge blessing. It kept my foot in that door and gave me like a little bit of income from that. And I actually still had my job at Kohl's, but they closed for a good deal of time. I don't really remember exactly, but so during the pandemic, actually, I got engaged.
Don't worry, so did I.
Hey, it's a great time to do it, right?
Exactly. When you get married, I don't know. Keep a date in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. So in fact, Thomas and I just passed our first anniversary of our engagement. So I was one skill I built was wedding planning. But it was, I mean, honestly, it was nice. I was helping my older sister homeschool her 3 her triplets who were in I think they were in 2nd grade at the time. So I adore them, and I already I hang out with them a lot. So it was so fun. We had in fact I lived with my family during that time. So because I was like, I don't want to be like totally alone. So like my roommate and I, like both of us, our parents live in town in Atlanta. So we just like both left our apartment and went to live with our parents. But it was nice. So I guess I built the skill of coming up with activities for my niece and nephews to do a little bit. Although, I worked with kids a whole lot, so I don't know that I really built that skill, but we had a good time. And actually I was homeschooled myself. So, and my older sister was too. So when the kids were brought into home, we were kind of like, okay, like, we're gonna do this. So but there's, of course, the extra obstacle of, having to check in the Zoom meetings with the teachers and things like that. So it really doesn't feel like the same. But so I feel like, that's what I did. And I would love to say that I read a lot of books, or that I created a lot. And but I really didn't, like, during that couple months of lockdown, so in Atlanta, it was really, there was like 1 full month, like a month and a half, I think, of like actual lockdown. And so I saw my boyfriend / fiance like once a week. And I cried a lot. You know what? Actually, one thing we did, I organized some Zoom play readings with some of my friends.
Nice.
So that was fun. We did The Importance of Being Earnest, and I don't remember what else, but and Dunkin' Donuts had free Donut Friday, so I did that a lot.
Hey, I'm gonna have to say, I've tried Dunkin' Donuts. I'm not a fan of their donuts. I've tried. What? There's something about them I don't like. I don't know. I usually like donuts, and I'm like, I was like, oh, I'm disappointed.
Oh, what about, okay, do you like Krispy Kreme though?
No, I really don't like Krispy Kreme. I'm a weirdo.
It sounds like you don't like donuts.
No, we have different donuts up here though. Like we have Tim Hortons and Country Style. Like we have stuff that you don't necessarily have, right? So maybe I'm just used to Canadian donuts. I don't know. Whatever that means.
Oh my gosh, I love it. That's amazing.
See, my favorite is the chocolate with the coconut on the outside. And I went down to Dunkin' Donuts and I got it and went, oh, I don't know. the flavor was totally different than what I guess I was used to. And
wow, okay, that's interesting. Well, if I go to Canada, I'll have to try a donut.
If you come to Toronto, I will get you a donut.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Or if I come down, I will smuggle across the border a donut. Because that's what the border guards are always worried about.
Yeah, exactly. They're looking for those donut smugglers.
Well, it does say you're not supposed to bring fruit across the border, right? Oh. But I've done that a couple of times by accident. I forgot I had an apple.
right, exactly. Oh my gosh. You know what? Okay, on the subject of like what did you learn during pandemic, or like what skills did you do? That was actually the first time that I like took the idea of podcasting pretty seriously. Mm-hmm. I recorded like, I guess kind of my first podcast, but I didn't put it out anywhere. So it doesn't really count. But I had this idea to record myself reading my middle school diary. So I did. I don't remember how long it was, but I recorded myself reading my entire middle school diary. And when I got to the end of it, I was like, okay, this would be really funny if I had like a co-host and we could like do commentary on it. So
that's too funny.
The original recording probably won't appear anywhere, but maybe in the future I can read it maybe with my husband. He would probably have some sassy commentary about that.
That is awesome. Sally, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about donuts and your diary and everything else that we talked about today. And thank you for joining the MTR family by play the Broadway Ginger podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome. I so enjoy listening to the best of everything.
Thank you.
It's so good. I love the variety. I love that like I can hear Legally Blonde one moment and like a random like French musical that I can't understand the next. It's great because I'm like, I wouldn't choose to listen to like just things that I don't know.
Yeah.
But being able to have the variety is really fun. And you know, honestly, I don't know. I feel like for a lot of us theater nerds, especially like I've been a theater nerd for like 27 years. Like I know a lot of musicals and it can be hard to like find new ones. So I really enjoyed getting to hear new ones on musical theater radio, but also not having to slog through an entire album. Because sometimes it's like there's only one good song from that musical, you know?
Yeah, just let me do that. I literally like people always go to Spotify and they like listening to something. I'm like, Spotify doesn't actually listen or care. It's a robot.
Spotify does not care.
I've listened to every single song on every single album, good and bad. So I will take the brunt of punishment for some terrible shows. But there's always one song. There's always at least one song where you go, that's what got this show on its whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I have this really sassy Spotify playlist that's called Best of the Worst.
Oh no.
And it's a collection of songs from shows that I don't love. So I've got like, well, okay, it's funny because one of the songs you played the other day from High Fidelity is on my Best of the Worst playlist. I was like, yeah, Desert Island Top 5.
I love that song. It's such a good song.
Yeah, or like I think I have the title song from 13, the musical, like the first song from 13.
Oh yeah.
So good. But I wouldn't listen to the whole song, the whole show.
And yeah, so I literally pick out this, call it in my programming, simply the best. And I just throw all those in. And then some other random ones. So you don't just hear. But well, thank you for listening.
Yeah, you're welcome. And you know, it's just always my subtle way of introducing my my IT husband to these more musical theater. Like he had never listened to Legally Blonde before, and last night like What You Want was on musical theater radio, and Thomas was like, this sounds like a fun musical, and I was like, it is. We're gonna watch it.
That's hilarious. All right, before we go, I always ask 3 questions of my guests. Now there's no right or wrong answers, but we're going to learn a little bit more about you. You know, we're going to delve into more of the psyche of Sally.
Oh boy.
So the first question, What creator or team within musical theater has had a great influence on you? This could be a composer, lyricist, director, producer, actor, even stage manager. They could be somebody famous, like, or not famous, like a teacher. You know, is there anybody who had a good influence on you in the musical theater world?
Gosh, that's a good question. I mean, yes, like, but who? So had an influence on me. I mean, it's interesting, of course, because like I didn't go in, you know, I haven't pursued theater, so I'm like, who has influenced me, and what does that mean?
You could just say nobody because you're too superior to everyone. You could say that. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could.
I'll give the Matthew McConaughey answer. Me in 5 years. No, okay, so rapid fire. One thing that's come to mind, personal example. My great friend of my family and my voice teacher and piano teacher, Bethany Irby Oki. She was a huge influence on me, I think, because she went to like, we knew her from church, but she's also a professional actress in Atlanta. And so we like went to see a bunch of her stuff. So like she was kind of the first, she was my connection to the Atlanta theater scene, like personally. So she would like, a lot of my family would go see her. And then sometimes she would comp our tickets, which was like often like 6 or something like that, which was really, really sweet. So I learned a lot from her, just like as a person. Like she would come over and teach me and my siblings voice lessons or piano lessons, and she was hilarious, and I really wanted to be her. And so I was a theater teacher for a little while right after college. And I will probably hopefully do that again. But a lot of my like habits as a theater teacher were like things I picked up from her. But she was always really encouraging, and I really admired her. And she like one year, instead of just like normal like voice recital, she like helped me and my siblings construct this like whole like cabaret, like almost like our own jukebox musical, with songs that we loved from road trips from childhood, like, so theater songs, Scarlet Pimpernel, Motown, Grease, no rules, just musicals.
Well,
so
that is the correct answer. But I love hearing when it's not somebody famous. Like, you know, how many times I've heard people say Sondheim, or
oh my gosh,
right? Because they're writers and they're composers. Like, but sometimes it's nice to hear just somebody from your life who had a great influence. And that's the thing, you forget about the not famous people who've had a huge impact on you. Right?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah. Because I mean, and I remember like my dad saying like, this is insane. Like Bethany is such an incredible performer. If there are people like her who are not on Broadway, like how insanely difficult is it to get on Broadway? You know?
And sometimes people just want to be happy, and they'll stay where they are and do it for the love. And you don't need the fame. You don't need to go to New York or London or Toronto or Atlanta, or, well, obviously you're in Atlanta.
We're already here.
but you know what I mean, right? You don't need to take it to that next super level, because you might not be as happy, but you still got the skills and the talent. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think being a Broadway performer is, I think it is an amazing thing, but you're right. I think it's really not the be all and end all of, like, it's not, it tells you what kind of person someone who's on Broadway is, in the sense that they will give up a lot of things for their art, and they have very specific skills. But I feel like you see more people who do theater and also have a life in regional theater.
Yep.
I think that's one of the distinctions.
Yep. For sure. All right. So question number 2. Now, when someone comes and gets interviewed, what do you recommend for them to make life easier for the interviewee? So what would you say to people who are getting interviewed?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so the like one of the worst things you can do as an interviewee, I think, is to just not talk.
Yeah.
And you laugh, but there are people and there are people who I've had experiences with interviewees who will get really caught up in figuring out exactly what question I just asked. And I understand that tendency, but the reality is the questions are just a framework for me to pull the most authentic version of my interviewee out of them. So I'm trying to create an environment where they feel comfortable to just start talking. And so it's kind of funny, like as someone who's interviewed people for so long, a lot of times if I interview someone who really hasn't been interviewed before, they will get really caught up in like, wait, like, were you asking me about like what kind of shows I did in this context or like in that one? And I'm like, just talk. Like just talk. And you know, and I can understand the pressure if it's like a live interview like this.
It's not quite live, but we are alive, but yes, it's not going to be live.
Yeah, but you know, but especially for like my for the work that I usually do, which is like when I would record, you know, do interviews just for a written medium, like I was like, just like calm down and just like talk. I think that's my very sympathetic response. Just calm down and talk.
Yeah. Another correct answer. So you are 2 for 2 now.
Yes, I have had someone like after I was finished with an interview, I had someone go, can you make me sound cool?
Wait, that one, I usually say that. A second. Oh man. Okay. Question number 3, and probably the most important and the most revealing about you.
Oh, boy.
Food in the theater or cell phones in the theater, which is worse?
Ooh. Oh man. You know, I mean, it depends. It depends on the duration. But if I were to, I guess, have just either a sustained ringing for, you know, a few seconds or a sustained crunching for a few seconds, I think the phone is worse. Are you talking about like a phone being wrong, like ringing, or are you talking about someone using it?
I'm just saying. I'm just leaving it out there.
Look at me asking. What exact question are you asking?
Exactly. Just talk. It's okay.
Yeah. So if it is phone usage, like someone using their phone, for sure, that is a absolute no. And I think a phone ringing is worse as well than food crunching or wrappers or whatever. Because I think I just feel like the sound of the phone takes me out of the moment more than hearing someone's food crunching. Which reminds me, I have to tell you a quick story about my dad was playing Bob Cratchit in a production of A Christmas Carol. And there was a kid crunching popcorn on the front row during what we call the dead Cratchit scene, where Tiny Tim has died and Bob Cratchit is talking to his family and he's crying and all that stuff. And so Dad said there's this boy just on the front row, like he has popcorn in a very, very crinkly bag, and Dad's like crying, and this boy is crunching. And Dad was like, I was this close to grabbing that and just throwing it across the theater. Because it was a tiny venue too. Like it was almost like black box style.
Correct answer. Just let you, though I would have accepted both are awful. So but you were correct.
Yeah, how about don't do either? But you know, I do love getting to snack on things in the theater, and I like drinking wine in the theater. However, you can't clap while you're holding a wine glass, which I discovered. But
it is very true.
I have definitely sloshed wine on myself. to clap.
Well, that's how the actors can tell if you like the show. The more people covered in wine, means the more clapping they did. If nobody's got any wine on them, that means you were sitting there the entire time with your glass, not moving. So that's how actors judge it.
Exactly. They'll be like, oh my gosh, no one clapped at the end of this number, and everyone comes out like with wine on themselves.
I think you as a reviewer should use wine stains now instead of stars or something like that.
Oh my gosh,
We're
that's
gonna
so
have red shirts out of.
I think that's great.
It's all yours if you want it. So, Sally, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great talking to you and getting to know you a little bit better.
Thanks so much for having me. This was so great.
Awesome. All right. Well, we were just speaking with Sally Fuller from the Broadway Ginger podcast. Tune in next week as we'll be talking with another guest or guests about their life, love, and passion that is musical theater. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanoff. Until next time, I'll see you when I see you.